Hello again. Here I am continuing another chapter from my book No Naked Walls, beautiful artwork by Glenn Badham. And every chapter in the opening section is all about different colours. This chapter, chapter 18, is no exception. Green patina. I have an open door policy. A person should be able to walk in and feel like they can look freely around and hopefully purchase or comment and leave without let or hindrance. I hate it when you have to press a bell and then someone stares at you and decides if they want to let you in. Somehow, it feels like you're guilty of something, even if your halo is shining. One late afternoon, I'm chatting to one of my artists. Usual thing, glass of wine, how's life? Oh no, he's left you again. You can't afford paints or canvases, don't know what to do next. Usual sort of thing. Not a happy situation, but blissfully improved when you offer an exchange of invoice for money for a sold painting. Then a drop more wine to celebrate. It's so important to keep both clients and creative persons happy. A youngish looking bloke wearing faded jeans and a white hooded top walks straight in, marches over to a sculpture at the back of the gallery on the tall plinth. It's a very heavy piece, made in bronze with a glorious green patina on a solid white marble base. He places both arms around the sculpture and lifts it up, turning to walk straight out the door. I catch sight of his face, and he has that look of a man stoned out of his brains on something. I'm now between the chap and the door. Something's certainly wrong, but part of me still thinks it's a joke, not a real theft in broad daylight. I go to stop him and he runs at me, pushing me aside. And as I try to grab him, there are two more blokes, both wearing hoodies and one bastard waving a knife. He lunges straight at me, aiming for my sternum. But I've seized hold of the second man and shoved him against his mate. The knife falls to the floor and all three of them run out of the road where a battered-looking blue car is waiting, its engine idling. They jump in and it speeds off, door still swinging, and in a moment of madness I grab onto the back of the car and am dragged up the road, falling off and rolling onto the tarmac. Not a clever idea. Actually, my whole reaction was a form of madness. I like and respect the sculptor who lent me the piece in the first place, and it felt like I was duty-bound to protect it. Now you're going to say, surely you're insured, and the answer is a resounding yes. But that isn't the point. Damn stupid heroics could have ended up with being my demise, and as the mind has a habit of working overtime, it begins the mental torment of what-ifs. I start to feel somewhat shaken. No other word for it. I hobble back into the gallery and the arcade security team are there. We saw it on the camera and we ran to you. Not quick enough to stop it though. Weird thing is, the whole scenario, from the chap entering to the three of them getting away with the sculpture, has taken just over a minute and a half. To me it feels like a whole era has gone by. The artist comes in, and she's visibly in much the same state as I am. I ran out the back. I'm so sorry, I didn't know what to do. That's okay, I say, trying to calm her down. Today we became a crime statistic. And the police arrive. Well, a detective and the quiet young officer who looks like he's just left school must be a sign of me getting older. Righto, what happened here then? Like a bad black and white television script. My brain is galloping with what I should have done and what I might have done and what I didn't do. I've been attacked and nearly killed. Slight exaggeration. Name? The one in plain clothes puts pen to paper and begins what feels like an unwarranted interrogation. By the time he asks, did you know the person? My fuse is getting shorter by the millisecond. Do you have any surveillance cameras? Yes. Would you like to see the footage? I can't see any sign that CCTV cameras are operating. That's a breach which might affect our ability to use the images in court. It's about protecting the privacy of the public, you know. Good grief. Sculpture stolen, man attacked, criminal gets off, and I'm in the wrong. We'll have to take the video as evidence and see if there's anything unusable on it. Do you have any enhancing equipment? I ask. He stares at me. We send stuff away only on more serious cases. The expense, you know. I can't believe what I'm hearing. I'll copy the video for you, I say, battening down my rising temper, and I'll drop it off tomorrow. He's not happy. It's evidence, he reiterates. I insist. He backs down. We eventually return to description of the stolen item, description of the thief, and description of accomplices. We don't have to mention the knife. It's a pointless complication and a bad pun. Why not? I really am furious. It means more bloody paperwork, he says. It's aggravated assault, I say loudly. He could have killed me. Why come to my gallery with a knife if you don't intend to use it? The knife is still lying on the floor where it's dropped. There, I say, one bloody large killing tool. Or is this something we don't need to record? I for one want it recorded and sod your paperwork. The officers do agree to take it with them when they leave. That evening, I'm supposed to be going to a charity ball. I feel I ought to go. You know, business as usual, big smile, ha ha. I actually think I'm okay. But the shock has definitely started to kick in, and I walk into the hall to be greeted with a glass of champagne and find I'm shaking uncontrollably. Was I all right? A resounding no. By sheer coincidence, the table I've been placed on that doesn't have any artist mothers or wives of husbands who want to be artists. For once the Lord has looked down and intervened. I'm sitting by the chief constable and someone who turns out to be something senior for a TV news channel. Are you all right, son? The chief asks, as though I'm a 12-year-old. No, I stutter. I most certainly am not. Then I retell the events of my afternoon. The guests sit in rapt silence. I have to say the chief cringed a little when he heard my description of his men's approach to questioning me as victim and vital witness, but the head of news wants to know a lot more, and a lot more he's going to get because he invites me into the studio tomorrow. Anyway, tonight now requires quite a few glasses of fizz and wine to stabilise the mind and the body. I can't say I remember getting home that evening, but I'm a little concerned to wake up still fully dressed on the couch. Yesterday seems like a bad dream. But as it doesn't come back to me, no, as it does come back to me, my hands are shaking, and I reckon shakes don't normally continue after the unreality of a nightmare. Back in the gallery, the papers have got hold of the story. The phone rings non-stop. It's sad to think it takes bad news to fill a gallery with nosy buggers or well-wishers, but it doesn't lead to increased sales. The worst moment is having to ring the sculptor and tell him. He doesn't seem unduly concerned, as, whatever the outcome, he does get paid. A good philosophy, I suppose, but I prefer to know who's enjoying the works I chose to sell. It's a day to crack a bottle or two, and Belinda is very caring, ensuring my glass is topped up regularly throughout the day. Alcohol doesn't usually make me mean, but I can't help wishing that little bastard gets nicked on another heist and shot at dawn. The world works in strange ways. There's a similar grab and a run attack in a designer shop a few days later. This time a member of the public is able to sketch the culprit on the tablecloth, and the police have something concrete to work on in addition to my scratchy video recordings. Business as usual means that the gallery doors stay open despite the insurance company wanting them locked, and actually we have a good few weeks selling quite a lot of work. This can't be bad, but I'm feeling a little under the weather and my mind tends to drift into unhealthy thoughts. Even particularly well-dressed, good-looking ladies don't merit my full attention. Something is definitely wrong with me. I really must do something about it. A friend suggests hypnotherapy. I'm intrigued and I pay a visit, but I don't think any of you reading this really want to hear what he pulled out of my head. It's not relevant anyway, so I won't mention it. Okay? 29 days after the horrible event, I receive a phone call from the police. Would you mind coming down to the station? We think we have something that needs identifying. No details. I agree and go straight over, and I'm greeted by a pretty officer of the female variety, hair in a tight plait, well-fitted uniform, not that I notice, and amazing eyes. I think I'm getting over my trauma. It can't be proper to comment on her eyes, but I don't wish to stop myself. Excuse me for saying, as a would-be artist and gallery owner, I can't help noticing how blue your eyes are. Sign here, is the reply. She indicates the open page of the visitor's book. I wait a few minutes, and then a tired-looking officer appears to escort me off to a dark green, tired-looking room. Strategically placed on the table, strategically even, lying on its side is my missing sculpture. Good grief. That's the piece, I agree, checking the edition number without touching the bronze. In case of fingerprints, you know. How come you recovered it? The abbreviated version is that a tip-off led to a raid on a house about 10 miles away, and they found it behind a curtain along with a load of other stolen artefacts and sellable goods. We need prints to see if yours are still on it. Just as well I didn't touch the sculpture just now then. They should have warned me rather than relying on my obvious common sense. What inks do you use? I ask, trying to sound like a professional. It's black. End of interesting conversation. The next day there's an identity parade. Back down to the station, and I'm placed in a darkened room with one-way glass. It's an unnerving experience, I tell you. They escort in 10 men, all dressed in grey hoodies and all pretty much the same height. Considering how short a time I had to take in the thief's facial contours while grasping with him, I was never likely to pick out in a crowd. I don't. It's a waste of time. Fingerprints do the trick anyway, and although he denies it, he's banged to rights, as they used to say on the Sweeney. So now I'm involved. I am a solved crime statistic with a reference number to match bully for me. On a lighter note, I have to inform the insurance company the piece has been retrieved. They have actually requisitioned a cheque for the insured amount. Oh, bugger. One more day and our financial position would have been much enhanced. Shit is the answer down the line from the sculptor. Mind you, the episode makes the mainstream newspapers, and a few weeks later I take a phone call from someone expressed an interest in buying the piece. So armed with paper clippings and the newly restored sculpture, I drive for 3 hours to a hugely palatial house in the south of England. I press the doorbell, and the butler arrives. I'm afraid the master's popped out. He'll be back in an hour or two, he says, to stay and have lunch, and he'll see you later. He ushers me into the dining room with a table set for 24 people. It's more like a film set than real life. I can hear a grandfather clock ticking away in the distance and a carriage clock on the mantelpiece competing with it. If it wasn't for the clocks, the atmosphere would be hushed enough for me to hear my own heartbeat. After a few minutes, the butler returns with a steaming vegetable broth on a silver tray. Would sir like some bread? That's okay, thanks, I quip, trying to look after my figure. He doesn't appear amused, but on the next trip brings me a carafe of wine. He pours it into an exquisite cut glass goblet, large enough to hold half a bottle. I rarely eat on my own, and my mind works hard on imagining what normal company should be round the table with me. I conjure up a general or two, add Lady Whatchamacallit and her niece, a mad scientist, and a director of some touring ballet company. That will make for a far more interesting lunch. Maybe throw in a philosopher or two, much better than eating on one's own. The conversation in my head goes exactly as I imagined it should do. The main course is served on a massive bone china plate with monogrammed initials in gold leaf on the outer rim. Roast beef, vegetables, roast potatoes and carrots. I hate carrots, but I'm too polite to mention the fact. Gravy is served in a silver jug, hallmarked Birmingham, 1840. I have to lift up the jug for a peep underneath just to get that information. Would sir like pudding or cheese? I'm stuffed, and I say so. He shows signs of disappointment. The cheese is local and rather good, if you don't mind me saying so, sir. How can I refuse? Pleased, he skips out the room. Not really, he walks off with a composed butler style. Pork flows at the cheese platter, and by now I'm not only full, but somewhat tipsy. Mr. Symes would like to show you the garden, sir. That's my cue to stand and leave the table. Fresh air seems a good idea. You're laughing because you're ahead of me. I know. We pass through the heavy oak door, along a corridor adorned with family portraits from the generations. It occurs to me that all the ancestors are staring at me like the House of Horror in the Disneyland ride. The sun, through the stained glass windows, drapes the drably clad butler in a blaze of many colours. There's a motto for you. Always put colour into your life. Please show our guest around, Mr. Symes. Be my pleasure. Mr. Symes has no teeth, yet beams from ear to ear. Follow me, sir. That's a bit of a problem. The wine and port have decided to kick in and launch a party in my head. I sort of sidestep along the old stone path and find them on the grass verge. There's a silence from Symes, but he waits patiently for me to return to the straight and narrow. Excuse me, I slur, struggling to maintain professionalism in the teeth of Latin names for every known shrub, tree and plant yet to be discovered in the Amazon. It keeps the brain active and engaged. Walk, walk, walk straight, I tell myself. What's that called? I ask aloud, trying to look interested and sober. We arrive at length beside a large pond. I suppose you'd call it a lake, really. It's surrounded by massive hydrangea bushes, manicured topiary, and a magnificent white marble sculpture positioned on the stone plinth in the middle of the water. It glistens in the bright light. Mr. Symes says it's a place there in the memory of his first wife. Even in my pickle state, I assume he's talking about his boss's wife, not his own. And I realise I've heard this story before. From the sculptor, indeed. The sculptor, that is, of the piece I'm delivering today. So he'll have two by the same man. I can count. He loves his art, he does. Says it's his duty to collect and share in the beauty of creativity. Suddenly the earth moves, the horizon shifts, and my vertical balance alters. Result? I fall headlong into the lake. I don't appear as sober as I'd like. Bloody good port, though. I emerge coughing and laughing at one and the same time. All dignity has been abandoned and left at the bottom of the lake. Symes thrusts a wooden pole in my direction and waves it around for me to grab. Shortly thereafter, a soaked gallery owner stands on the side of the lake, having learned the sobering effects of a cold dip. Another ruined suit. The butler must have been watching us, because he appears with a long, luxurious white linen robe and a huge towel. Expressionlessly, he offers me both. These might help, sir. Butler 1, yours truly, 0. Eventually we make our way back to the mansion, squelching my way up the path. I feel like a stooge in an Ealing comedy. Would sir like a hot toddy? Sir, would not, thanks. A strong black coffee will suffice. The telephone rings somewhere off in the distance, and the maid comes into the room to say that the master will be staying out for the evening. He says he hopes you've enjoyed his hospitality and apologises for not being around. He says the butler can handle a financial transaction on his behalf. And finally, he asks if you'd like to meet him in his club in London at a date and time convenient to yourself, sir. Her use of sir is softer and much more attractive than the butler's, but he's the one trusted with the chequebook. She curtsies and leaves the room. The writing of the cheque is an act of pure performance art. The butler sits down, takes out an exquisite gold pen from his inner pocket, and fills in the details in beautiful copperplate handwriting. They must teach that in butlering school. He looks up and says, I believe that's correct, tears it from the stub and hands me the cheque. I glance over and smile. That's great. There's no charge for the after-lunch entertainment. I could swallow the silence. Please thank your boss for lunch and tell him his gardens are truly memorable. Thank you very much. Just to add a little note in this, in reality, years ago I did get attacked in my own gallery, and I swear to God it looked like a joke. Somebody just walked straight to the back of the gallery, picked up a very expensive bronze and proceeded to walk out, and then 2 guys came in and I did actually go for them. And the reality was, we did get found, and the bloke did go down. And what was worse is he escaped from a low prison, but then eventually got caught again and then went down for something like 12 years. So I am a statistic, I am a crime statistic, and I live to tell the tale, but it wasn't very nice. But for the purpose of this book, the story had to go in. Thanks for listening.